Okay, welcome everybody. Today's class is going to be about arm strengthening, especially arm strengthening for Chaturanga and the Vinyasa practice. We're at a particular junction in time, whereas normally in the summer times, yoga studios and gyms might see a little drop off in terms of attendance. I am going to predict an uptick in attendance because many localities, especially here in Washington, D.C., are returning to their normal standards for how many people are going to be allowed to be in the gym or how many people are going to be allowed to be in the yoga class, in a yoga class. So that might not be true everywhere, but it's true here. So we're going to do some a practice today that I think should support you in making sure that you can go back to a more robust, vigorous group class without injuring yourselves, especially upper body. So we're going to be strengthening upper body. We're going to be conditioning for Chaturanga and the Vinyasa. And you're going to see me talk about the sort of behind the curtains concepts for how to build strength in your upper body when it's mostly just body weight, which is what we do in yoga. We don't have external weights, we're using our body weight. So to that end, we're going to want a block, maybe 2 blocks if you have 2 blocks, a blanket, and a chair. I happen to have a folding chair over here, so any kind of chair that you have will probably be fine. You just don't want it to be on wheels. Even if all you have is an ottoman or the edge of a bed or couch, that will be fine too. So let's start with a little bit of centering. And roll your shoulders a couple of times. Maybe take one hand over your heart, one hand over your belly. Full breath in, big sigh out. Let yourself settle. Everybody on the planet has been through a lot this last year. Even if there have been silver linings for you personally, the global stresses of the year have touched all of us on some level. I don't think that meditation or yoga washes any of that stuff, any of that heaviness away. Instead, I think of something like meditation and yoga as sort of polishing, cleaning out the space, cleaning out the vessel to allow us to hold more of those sensations, the stresses, the sadness, the frustration, the anger, the joy. If that concept is new to you, let's stay in conversation. But essentially, we're slowing down, we're sort of creating a little space to just allow all of those feelings that are true and legitimate and a real part of ourselves to kind of move through. It's not about tamping down, pushing away, or trying to be or feel something that is other than what we actually feel. So let's just collectively take a full breath in, acknowledge this time, let that breath go, and feel how our feelings are just little waves of energy that move through us. The thing to remember about feelings that is intellectual, they're not static, and they do not define us forever. Connect with your breath. I don't say this a lot, but soften your shoulders if that feels appropriate for you. Slacken your jaw. Stick out your tongue if you'd like. Just scan your body with your eyelids heavy, noticing if there's any particular place that feels like it's efforting a lot to hold you up. For me, I noticed quite a bit happening at my mid back. I was sort of lifting myself a little like this. And so once I just settled down, dropped my ribs back a little, let my chin drop down, that feeling of gripping went away and I feel more stacked, gravity supported. Take 3 more breaths in silence. And take a full breath in. If it moves you, feel free to let out a big sigh. And on your next inhale, crack open your eyes. Roll your shoulders a few times. Notice how close to your ears your shoulder blades can get. Know that this is not a bad movement. It does not mean you're stressed when you contract these muscles on purpose. It's just a thing. It's just a natural human movement. Take the rolls in the other direction, and if you want to get a little funky with it, you can let the shoulders roll in opposite directions, one from the other. This is just a nice, potentially novel movement. And then interlace your fingers, press your palms forward, reach the arms up towards the sky. Get any little shifts that you want to make side to side, out. And bring the arms right over to chest, and we're going to do some active wrist stretches. So just sort of glide back and forth a little bit. Waving the wrist. And then release. Set your block off to the side. And we're going to begin on our back today. So I am going to have you, if you have a blanket or even a folded towel, I'm going to have you put that under your head. If you don't have that, you'll be fine as well. But let's try with a blanket under the head. And I want you to drop your chin in the direction of your chest. We'll bring both thumbs underneath the chin. Separate the top teeth from the bottom teeth, and just give this slight little nod, starting to create a bit of resistance between the thumbs, pushing up gently, and the chin dropping down gently. So back of the neck is long. Make sure the back muscles are soft, like at the back of your mid-back. If you feel comfortable, you can lift your head and then lower it down. Free up one of your hands. Keep the resistance. Make sure your neck muscles are soft in the front of your neck. Chin drops down, back of the neck long. Lift it up and lower down. And what we're looking for here is we're looking for the deeper muscles to take over the more superficial muscles. So neck strength is actually more central to arm strength than most people would believe. Chin down, back of the neck long. Curl it up and lower it down. Full breath. Exhale, curl it up. Inhale, lower it down, and then release your arms. Shake it out a little bit. I guess I'm shaking my legs. And then we're going to roll the shoulders a little bit to the extent that you can here on the mat, just until they get to a place that feels really neutral. And bend your elbows. Press your palms, flip your palms up towards the sky with your fingers pointing back towards your head. This is the position for the upper body to be in Chaturanga, right? So this is Chaturanga arms, and this is arms by your side. This is just more like a neutral position, right? So palms flip up, Chaturanga arms. And then arms by your side. This is more of a neutral arms. And this Chaturanga arm is something that we get to in the vinyasa from here.
We go from plank, so come into plank arms, palms still to the ceiling, fingernail side facing your face, and fingers pointing towards the crown of your head. This is our plank arms. This is our Chaturanga arms. When we're pushing against the floor, the main thing that straightens our arms, pushing against the floor or pushing into the air, is triceps. And when we're lowering our body weight down, the main muscle that is lowering us with control is also triceps. So triceps does a lot of work inside of the vinyasa. Draw your knees into your chest. You can give them a nice little hug, rock a little side to side, and then bring your arms up again and down. And we're going to add a little bit of core work. Cross your forearms, bringing your right hand to your left knee, your left hand to your right knee. Curl your toes up towards your eyes and start to build a little bit of resistance here. So if you do not feel this in your core, adjust the angle. You can also uncross your forearms and try without that cross. And you can also try one leg at a time. I don't want you to feel it predominantly in the hip flexor, although you might feel a little in that fold of the hip. I would rather you feel it predominantly kind of like across the torso. You're going to hold one leg in that position and then straighten the other one out. So now you get into Chaturanga leg. Switch the leg. Chaturanga leg on the other side. Chaturanga is the yoga push-up for anybody who didn't know that. And we're doing a little bit of arm strength in this action, but as you can tell, it's mostly core, right? Last two. And then come right back in. Set your feet flat to the floor and swish your knees a little bit side to side. After neck stability, the next most important thing is shoulder stability. My computer just turned off, so I'm going to go and see what that is about. Can you guys still see me? Looks like you can. Okay. So after, back on track. I don't know why that happened. After neck stability, the next most important thing is your scapular stability, your shoulder blade stability. So we're going to play with that a little bit. Let's start with some Superman arms, and you can straighten out your legs. You're going to bring one elbow over to the side, and you're going to drive it down and press your other arm to the sky. So really punch up towards the sky and lower. This is the first part of the Turkish get-up, if you know that movement. But it's also just a simple and great way to create some stability. Let's take it to the other side. As I drive the elbow down, I'm starting to really lengthen from elbow to fist. And never mind any little creaks you hear from my floor. At least it's not my back making all those cracks and creaks. And last one each side. Really, really reach, create some stability here. And really, really reach on the other side, create some stability here. And then bring both arms behind you. You're going to prop yourself up on your elbows, okay? And I want you to shift a little bit right and left. If this bothers your shoulders, you can also do this kind of like in seated, just rock a little side to side if this bothers your neck or your shoulders. So I know this one can be a little cranky. See if you can reach one arm fully free. Keep your chin moving in the direction of your chest. This, by the way, helps with the low version of boat pose, Navasana. You don't have your elbows on the floor typically for Navasana, but you do keep the rest of this torso shape. And so we're activating some of those diagonal fibers that need to be engaged in Ardha Navasana. And then everybody
If you're not there already, rise yourself up to your elbows. And I want you just to shift a little side to side. Grab a hold of your block. Place your block behind you, close to your sacrum. You can push down onto the block and get your chest nice and tall. And then you're going to lean back and you're going to bend your elbows a little bit. The great news about this particular movement is you can make it as big or as shallow as you want. Tiny little movements or nice deep movements if you wiggle the block behind you or adjust your hands to the floor and rock back and forth. Come back to neutral. Bend both of your knees and move through as much of a range as feels good. We're going to start with the hand really nice and close, arm straight, one elbow close to the belly. So we're going into a reverse table. If this, I'll be offering some options once I show you the first bit. So here's the ideal, right? Or one idea of where you could go. If that doesn't work for you today, you can also stay in this kind of hovering position where you're just posted on that arm and you're just lifting up a little bit, right? So inhale, reach, exhale down. Inhale, reach, exhale down. Go ahead and lower. And we'll switch to the other side. Have the hand right close to you, elbow in, and we're gonna push it up and lower down. Push it up and lower down. Again, you can just hover, or you can really, really rise. And then stay low. Cross out your shins. Let's come over onto hands and knees. Feel free to use your blanket to cushion your knees, okay? From table position, warm up your wrists with some circles going in one direction, and then warm up your wrists with some circles going in the other direction. Drive your hands down into the ground and round your upper back just a little bit. Find your way to neutral. Hands down into the ground. Round your upper back just a little bit. So this activates our serratus anterior and some other scapular stabilizing muscles. Last one. Lower down to your forearms. We're going to do the same thing, but we're going to add the sag between the shoulder blades. So if it feels okay, let your shoulder blades, let the chest kind of sag down to the floor. For anybody who needs to, this might feel a little bit more accessible with your forearms on the block. So sag and then round. As you round, lean in. Sag and then round. And finally, sag and round, and stay rounded. Drive your left elbow down into the ground, forearm down into the ground. Reach your right arm forward if you have that capacity, or out to the side if that works for you. Shift to the other side. Round. Drive the right forearm down into the ground. The left arm either reaches by your ear, out to the side, or by your hip, whatever works best for you. And then relax. Shift, and let's all take that right arm now to the side if you didn't do it to the side earlier. Feel how the movement initiates from the shoulder blade. Shift and reach, left arm out to the side. And shift, and this time, right arm by your side, shoulder blade back, palm faces the floor. And reach, sag, and drive the shoulder blades around the side of the ribs. Last one, left arm by your hip and lower down. If you use the block, set it out of the way. Come right back onto hands and knees and shift your weight to your left, to your right leg, lifting your left. Draw up through the belly, round the upper back. Feel free to do this on your forearm as needed. And then tap your toes down. Keep the spine stable. Keep driving the arms down. Lift and lower your left leg. Keep it lifted. Bring your right hand to your abdomen. Drive your left hand into the floor. And so this creates proximal stability. It creates diagonal stability, cross-body stability. And then as your right arm reaches forward, really allow the shoulder blade to lift by the ear. Draw your ribs in. It creates both length and strength right around the shoulder blade. Lower, lower, switch legs. Right leg back, drive the arms down, proximal stability. Float and lower this back leg. Activating glutes, distinguishing between core movement and hip movement. Shift onto your right arm, keep the leg lifted. Bring your left hand to your abdomen, stay here, or reach that left arm by your ear. And again, alternative to arm by the ear, if that doesn't work for you for any reason, arm by the side or out to the side. So whichever position works. Go ahead and lower and lower. Rest back on your heels. You can come into a seated position if you'd like. And let's all come into half or into kneeling. So kneeling, both knees on the ground, underneath your shoulders. We're going to bring the arms straight out in front. Plank arms. Bring the arms by your side. Chaturanga arms, yoga push-up. Plank, Chaturanga. Plank, Chaturanga. One of the things you typically hear yoga teachers say is upper arms parallel to one another in Chaturanga, so hug in under the armpit. And although that's perfectly acceptable, it is actually a lot less natural to do that than to let your elbows go out to the side a little. You'll probably build a more well-rounded strength if you at first learn how to do a Chaturanga or yoga push-up with your elbows just a little bit winged. That's my anatomy-informed 2 cents of the matter. We're going to go back onto hands and knees for our bird dogs. And this time, really work on stabilizing both the shoulder blade, but also the rib cage that the shoulder blade sits on. So come back onto hands and knees. Bring your right hand to your right hip. Draw that shoulder blade back. Elbow points up towards the sky. Keep it there. And then arm out here, kind of like at, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock on the dial, and then sweep it up to 3. 3 to 5, keeping that hand facing the ground, palm facing the ground, right here. Left arm pushing into the floor. Movement initiating from the shoulder blade. Now, if you want to go really wild with this, do all of this in plank. Last one. Lower the hand, shake it out. Shift to the other side, arm by your hip. And reach to the side, back of the neck long. So if you've ever wondered why I give this cue to keep the back of the neck long, hopefully this class starts to elucidate the reason for that for you, because it's really all about stabilizing here and stabilizing around the shoulder blades so that we can build strength peripherally. Last 1 or 2, arm just gliding through, initiating the movement from the shoulder blade, and then lower. And step one leg back, coming into a plank with one knee down. And then if you feel comfortable, back of the neck long, Step the other leg back, coming into a full plank. Round your upper body here. Get a spirit of rounding. Almost nobody's going to really round into a cat shape, but get the spirit of rounding right between the shoulder blades. Lower your knees. Release. Shake it out. And then start with your second leg. So I first reached my left leg back. Now I'm reaching my right leg back. Round and set. Keep the pelvis level as you add the other leg. Keep the back of the neck long. Gaze right between the thumbs. Front hip points up, glutes active. Good. And lower and lower. For anybody who wants a really solid Chaturanga, I would recommend working on that particular variation of plank pose. So showing you in kneeling what that looks like. Plank arms. Make your arms extra long from the shoulder blades. This action here is what's going to activate your core. It's what's going to keep you stable. It's what's going to build your resilience to hold your body horizontal to the floor in a plank without overly relying on your hip flexors, without overly relying on your low back muscles, like a little suspension bridge to hold you up, okay? We'll come down onto our forearms next. So come onto the forearms. Straighten one leg and then the other, and then start to shift a little forward and back. Using the same principles as plank, rounding the upper back, squeezing your glutes, make it dynamic. And then lower down to your knees. Find a really soft variation of Sphinx pose. So this soft variation is one in which you're not like worried too much about whether the elbows are right under the shoulders, any of that extra geometric stuff. You're just letting your elbows splay and rocking a little bit side to side. Even this action, even though it feels really gentle, it helps you to build scapular stability. Last one or two. Good. Strong, active legs. Squeeze your glutes. Lift your kneecaps, tops of the feet to the floor. Float your chest, working the muscles of your upper back. And now put your hands closer to where your low ribs are. Inhale, lift the chest. Pull the chest forward. You can have your toes curled under, rise into upward facing dog. I'm going to come check on everybody. Excellent. Okay. And lower right back down if you're still in upward facing dog. As you can tell, upward facing dog uses also a lot of triceps. Okay. So from up dog, we're going to keep our knees down in this gentle version of up dog, and we're going to start to bend the elbows, slow motion all the way back down to the floor. From the floor, push up as a unit to a knee down, through a knee down plank, to hands and knees. And I apologize because this next little bit, it's definitely a lot. It's definitely a lot on the arms. Give yourself a rest as needed. And this is where the chair is going to come in handy, actually. Okay. So I'm going to show you this next movement on the chair, and you can decide what you would like to do. Okay? Option number one, find a plank from your knees to the crown of your head with your hands wrapped around the seat of a chair. Make sure that chair is not going to move, okay? And you're going to start to lower down and lift. It may not feel like a lot, but all it takes is 10, 15 repetitions for many, many people. If you're really keeping this connection between the ribs and the pelvis, to start to feel a little shaking or to slow down a little bit. A couple of things. Notice that my elbows are going to the side. Notice that my butt is moving along with the rest of my body. So I'm not doing this. This is actually a perfectly fine movement. If this feels like too much for you to do this plank push-up, this knee down plank push-up, you can always let your butt go back and this will put less weight through your arms. Here's what I'm calling option number 1, but it's really option 1 and 2, since I gave you 2 different things that you could do there. If you have been doing that for a moment, give yourself a rest, shake it out a bit. And before we move on, I'm gonna show a dynamic stretch to the triceps, and I'll explain why we're doing this. So as I've mentioned a couple of times, Chaturanga, up dog, down dog, which we haven't even done yet, they all involve a lot of triceps action. So because we're constantly contracting triceps, a lot of funky things can happen there where it starts to create an imbalance. Why don't we also give triceps a little bit of a stretch break, but instead of conventional stretching, we're going to do dynamic stretching. Elbow towards the sky. Other arm is just kind of holding that arm in position, and you're going to try and tap your own shoulder blade, right? And straighten and tap. If for whatever reason elbow to the sky doesn't work for you, you can also park your arm here and tap your shoulder. So stack your block on the seat of the chair and you'll get the triceps stretch that way. What this does is it contracts and releases the whole muscle through its full range of motion, so that that extra tonicity, that extra contraction that we get from our yoga movements doesn't add up. Switch sides. Stay upright or park your elbow here. I know for myself that because I did so much vinyasa for a number of years, I really overdeveloped my triceps in relation to my biceps. And so I'm very, like, you might not have felt much, but I always feel a lot there still years after kind of giving up vinyasa for the most part. So go back to the version with the chair, the knee down plank, or the just upper body kind of de-weighting, or we can practice on the ground. So the trick to the practice on the ground is that you're going to start in a knee down plank and then either bend your elbows a little bit or a lot. Remember how I said earlier that a lot of yoga teachers tell you that you've got to keep your elbows in? Feel free to let your elbows go out. Feel free to play with different hand placements for where your hands might feel most comfortable, because this isn't about perfecting a form. This is about building our upper body stability and strength, however that can happen most naturally. For example, I typically take my hands wider. If you were looking closely at my hands right now, you'd see that they were kind of off the yoga mat a little bit on each side. Lower and raise. As you do this, keep your glutes active. Keep your chin close to your chest. Little push-ups. And then lower all the way to the ground. Float your chest, activating from here. Whether you're doing cobra, which I recommend hands a little in front of the shoulders, elbows stay bent the whole time, or up dog, hands a little behind the shoulders, close to the low ribs, elbows stay straight the whole time. I'm going to suggest that no matter which one of those you choose, your triceps are working pretty darn hard, okay? So from your back bend, lower to your knees, lower your body down with control, and then very quickly reset. Chin is going to move towards the chest. I'm pretending that there's a magnet here at the low ribs up towards the ceiling. And then I'm going to go back. If you're going into down dog today, go ahead and rock into down dog. If down dog isn't accessible for you for whatever reason, then keep your elbows straight and just rock back and forth here on hands and knees in table. We'll take 2 more breaths in either of those positions. And then slowly lower and lower onto your side. Let's talk about side plank. The very first thing that you want to practice if you are looking to build strength and stability for side plank is going to be resting in the way that I'm resting right now. Forearm on the ground, hips on the ground, lying on your side. It's like I was sleeping on my side and I just heard a noise and I pushed up onto my elbow. From here, ribs lift and lower. Try to go through a really full range. Try to make this movement as smooth as you can. You can see it's easier for me to sag than it is for me to push and arch up. Notice if one tends to be more habitual for you than the other. And you can also appreciate here how much neck strength and stability is required of side plank, right? We're not even in anything that looks like side plank yet, and already the neck is working pretty hard. Come to a neutral position. Sweep that arm that you were just resting on across your body. And instead of really pulling on it, you're going to push the arm gently back in or out, as it may be, and create a little bit of a tug of war. Last two movements. We'll go to the other side. Rest on your hips, on your forearm, sag your rib cage, and drive it down and lift up. Sag and lift. Sag and lift. These movements are really, really important as you progress into, potentially, what we would call a full side plank, or what's more commonly recognized as a full side plank. Last two, because there you've got a lot more weight suspended. You've got your whole body weight. As you rise up, again, find a comfortable seat. You're going to bring your arm across your body and you're going to push out a little bit, hold it in an isometric, and then drag it back. And there's this constant resistance. Like if you were playing tug of war, you wouldn't just give up, right? Until the very, very end when your hand gets raw. Our hands are not going to get raw with this. So just have it be a gentle back and forth. Excellent. Okay. And now for the next stage of side plank. So what I would propose is the next stage of side plank. And we're always, when we're working with progressive, when we're working with body weight strengthening, it's much more difficult, not impossible, but more difficult to be intelligently progressive about it. If I were to first start lifting weights, I would lift the lightest ones, check and see if that felt good or if that felt like a strain to me. And then I would slowly, over many weeks, build up to bigger weights. But on the yoga mat, we just have our bodies with what they weigh today. And there's nothing wrong with that. So what we have to do is we have to modulate with gravity. And I'm just to reiterate my something that I said earlier. If you are someone who is going to be going back after an extended break to challenging yoga classes, I just really encourage you to take all of these modifications that I'm giving you, all of these variations of the theme, and use them progressively, because it's much more important to build strength to a point where your body can tolerate it than it is to perform something that someone else says or thinks is normal, right? And if you get injured trying to do crazy amounts of vinyasa after having not touched them for a long time, it's going to be a much bigger setback than the slow progression that I teach you today. So enough of the chatter. I'll shut my pie hole, as the kids say. You're going to put your elbow now on your block in the low position, okay? And this time, stack your knees. If you know you don't need this and you want to put your arm straight to the floor, that's fine. But this just gives you a little bit less weight through the arm. right? You're going to lift your hips, come into a side plank here. So knee down, side plank, still on your forearm, but your forearm is elevated. So if my forearm were on the ground, I would have that much more weight through my arm. But instead, I have a little more weight through my leg this way. We're going to lift and lower. Build that strength and stability. Adding side plank, or sorry, adding oblique action, which is also an important part of side plank, and adding some lateral hip stability. Let's do 2 more. I don't know, I'm not counting. Then we'll take it to the other side. Stack shins, lift your hips, lower. Feel your obliques kick in, feel the outer hip kick in. Make sure that you're kind of in that Tadasana plank-like vibe from the crown of the head out through your knees. And then we'll call this one our last one on this side. Okay, the next thing, after you've built up proximal shoulder stability, a little bit of core, a little bit of neck stability, you can then move more peripherally. Straight arms, and things that put a lot of weight into your hands, right? So come onto your fingertips and flatten out your fingers. And then as you rise up to your fingertips, we're going to go back and forth from flat to fingertips a bunch of times. Make sure that the very last knuckle is curled under. So something like this, right? Like if you're making a claw in the air. You can do both hands at the same time. You can do one hand. And you can also kind of go back and forth. Most people, after about 10 or 15 of these repetitions, are going to feel a little bit of fatigue, maybe even in the forearms. Okay, last 2. We're going to go ahead and set ourselves up. So the muscles that cross the fingers, they all initiate in the forearm and they all cross the wrists. They're really a vital part of us being able to put weight on our hands without feeling pain, right? So as we progress into what might be considered the next version of side plank, I want to give you a couple of options here. So option 1 is to do what we just did on our forearms, but now on your hand. Hand can be on the block for less weight through the arm, or hand can be on the floor. The other thing the block can do for you, if it's positioned just so, probably in the medium height so you can grip it, is allow you to use a different set of muscles to grip. And that can give you a little bit less pressure into the actual wrist. Okay? Wherever you are, you can stay here, you can lift and lower, or you can challenge yourself by lifting your top leg, maybe the top arm, maybe bending that knee up and straightening it out. So let's do about 8 to 10 of these. And then go ahead, lower down, flip it around, take it to the other side. Remember, you have the option to lift and lower your hips. You have the option to stay still and static, or you have the option to add your leg. I'm going to go check in. And you guys are probably at more than me. When you're ready, go ahead and lower yourself down and lower down. Obviously, the quote unquote full version of side plank is to have your legs stretched out straight and then build up to 30-second, 45-second holds. 60-second, you're welcome to do that, but you might end up compensating somewhere else in your hip flexors, your core, your back muscles. So I would start with these, wear yourself out, fatigue yourself with these versions of side plank before trying to do nice long holds in what would be called or considered a full side plank. We're going to wrap this up by coming back to the concept of the vinyasa. So we looked at this front body movement, this side body movement, side body strengthening for the arms. Let's go back to Chaturanga, up dog, and down dog, and how we can practice those sustainably and progressively. Come back to hands and knees. Place your block in the medium position, pretty much under your belly button. Walk your hands forward. Walk your knees back. As you lean in, your shoulders should go just a little past your fingertips if that is reasonable for you. If not, turn your fingers out and see if that helps. And then from this knee down plank, slowly lower. Feel the block support under your pelvis and straighten up. We'll do 3 of these. Lower down, lower all the way down. Keep the block kind of uncomfortably under your pelvis, that's okay. Straighten your legs out behind you. Curl the toes under, back of the neck long. And then this is probably one of the more challenging and a little bit abstract moves, so bear with me. Your lowest ribs are going to magnetize towards the sky. Then you lift up off the block, okay? I'm going to show that again. We're starting off in this draped position, pelvis over the block, forehead down to the ground, hands back close to your low ribs, forearms are almost vertical, but you can turn your hands out to whatever position feels comfortable, and you can let your elbows splay a little bit. Press through the crown of the head forward, ribs in and up, shoulder blades stay on your back, legs straighten, or not, you can keep your knees down to straighten up off the block. It's a lot harder to get off the block if your knees are up. I would propose that if you can suspend yourself off the block into the shape of Chaturanga, then you can go back to slowly practicing Chaturanga. If you could not lift yourself off the block as a unit, then I would always take this knee down version of Chaturanga that we're going to do next. So from table, walk your knees back, lean forward, lower and raise. Lower and raise until you feel more steady. Lower all the way down to the floor. Find your cobra or your up dog. Feel your triceps activate. Shoulder blades neutral on your back. Lengthen. Walk back. Knees stay down or you move through full plank. Find your way, straight line, and then option to rock back and forth or make your way to down dog. From down dog, please lower back to your knees. Find yourself in seated. Know that your best friend when you're building progressive strength, especially through the upper body, it's always going to be gravity. So adjusting gravity. Everybody here can do Chaturanga at the wall. 90% of us, well, that might be an exaggeration, but a lot of us are going to be relatively comfortable doing Chaturanga with the hands on the seat of the chair. And then the hardest Chaturanga is going to be where our bodies are fully horizontal to the ground. This is how you build up. So my arms, I feel sufficiently warm. I hope you do. My arms also feel nice and moved. So we're going to find a comfortable seated position and go through a gentle cool down. Roll your shoulders back. Roll your shoulders forward. Bring your hands to your belly. Take a couple of breaths. Bring your hands to your ribs. Feel your rib cage expand and contract. And then please reach your right arm straight out in front of you. Left hand meets the right. And we're going to pull this imaginary bow, arrow onto the bow as we twist backwards. Hand lands behind you, hand lands in front of you. Stay connected to breath and notice what it is to be in a twist where your upper back muscles are doing the work for you, not your arms. Release. Left arm goes forward, right hand meets the left. You're going to pull that arrow onto the bow. Feel your upper back muscles doing the work of the twist for you. Feeling the breath stay full. We'll inhale right back to center. And then shift a little side to side. Arms out and up. Palms together over the heart. Roll your shoulders a couple times if that feels comfortable. And then gather anything that you might want for Shavasana as you come onto your back. I'm going to show you, since we happen to have the chair with us today, I'm going to show you a way to do Shavasana with your legs up on the chair as well. My traditional way of getting into the shape known as Shavasana is to roll a blanket up and place it under my thighs. When I have a chair, this particular chair needs a bit of cushion. So I use the blanket here over the seat of the chair, and there's two reasons for this. One is for cushion, and the other is to make sure that my calves are really supported, and so that my knees are not higher than the seat or lower than the seat of the chair. So I've adjusted the height of the chair with the blanket, right? You want the blanket to support the bulk of your calves. It's okay if your feet come off the edge. And you want your knees, whether you're on your back or you're using the chair to support you, you want your knees to splay a little out to the side. You'll bring your hands to your belly if that feels comfortable, or your hands to the sides, palms face up. Allow the jaw to be relaxed. Smooth out the skin of the face. Even allow your tongue to be relaxed. And once you feel physically settled, invite in a bit of spaciousness around your breath. And yogis, you're welcome to stay here, inviting the breath evenly in and out through the nose, feeling the support of the ground beneath you. You're also welcome to start to feel your breath travel into your fingers and into your toes if you're ready to move again. Starting to let some wiggles happen, some circles happen.
Whether you're flat on your back or your shins are supported up on the chair, draw your knees to your chest. Take another breath or two here. And then take your time to roll to one side, gently pressing up to a seated position. Gathering anything you might need for our final closing. Back of the neck is long. Breath is steady. Let's commit to showing up in the way that we show up on the yoga mat and every other aspect of our lives. Let's commit to showing up prepared for challenge, but also willing to pause and be kind to ourselves. Let's show up in a way that brings us spaciousness between our thoughts, grounded in breath. Thank you to everybody who showed up today. Take care of yourself.